Hamilton Municipal Heritage Meeting. Presenters laptop sound check 1. Presenters laptop sound check 1. Clerk's laptop sound check 1. Clerk's laptop sound check 1. Presenter's laptop sound check 2. Presenter's laptop sound check 2. Clerk's laptop sound check 2. Clerk's laptop sound check 2. live.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of our Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to order. I'd like to advise the public that our meetings of this, just closing a menu here, that our meetings are being recorded on the City of Hamilton and archived on the city's website. We'll start by going through our roll call. As I announce the names, if I could just get everyone to acknowledge their presence. Councillor Pearson.
Present.
David Beeland. We can see David there. Janice Brown.
Here.
Karen Burke.
Present.
Graham Carroll.
Present.
Charles Dimitri.
Present.
Lynn Lundstead.
Present.
Robin McKee.
Present.
Timothy Ritchie has sent his regrets. And Will Rosart. I don't see Will on the line today. So moving on, Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have under item 6, delegation request from Dr. S. Sheehan respecting the property at 85 Holton Street South, which is the former St. Giles Church, for today's meeting. Under consent items, item 7, 7.1, heritage permit applications, delegated approvals, 7.1A, heritage permit application HP 2021-029, installation of exterior signage at the rear of the property for the new retail store at 5 Mill Street South, Waterdown in Ward 15, located within the Mill Street Heritage Conservation District, bylaw number 9634H. 7.1B, Heritage Permit Application HP 2021-031, installation of an exterior signage on main floor of 46 James Street North, Hamilton, Ward 2, bylaw number 082215. Item 7.2, the Heritage Permit Review Subcommittee minutes of June 15th. And under item 13, general information and other business, we have 13.3, which is the staff work plan.
Thank you, Lorraine. May I now have a mover and a seconder on the motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I see Graham and I see Lynn.
Is there anyone opposed to the approval of the agenda as amended? Seeing none, that item is carried. Under our declarations of interest, do we have any declarations of interest today that we need to declare? Seeing none, we move on to the approval of our minutes from our previous meeting. We have our meeting minutes from June 25th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve the June 25th, 2021 minutes?
Janice?
Janice, did you have a question?
Yes, through the chair. I have a question with regard to a communications item number 5 in those minutes. When should I bring that up?
Now?
Thank you very much. It's just with regard to the correspondence from Reverend Ian Sloan, and it's with regard to the property at 85 Holton Street South. It was directed to go back to staff and the chair, and I just wonder, is there any update on that? Have we seen that, or will we see it? Thank you. That's it.
I'm not sure if staff want to comment. I have not been informed that it has been approved as a recommendation. Maybe Lorraine, if you have any follow-up on that.
It was in the...
I believe it is with staff at this time.
Is there anybody that might respond to that through the chair?
Perhaps we can provide you with an update after this meeting, Janice.
Well, I think everyone through the chair,
I understand
I think
that, but
everyone should get it.
I understand that, but I don't believe that there is anyone who can answer the question.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. I didn't realize that. I see all the names across the board.
So
through the chair.
Anita's
Sorry,
online now.
excuse me. Yes, we're here and we did hear the question. We just don't have an update to provide at this time in terms of the correspondence, but I do recall that it was referred to staff, so we'll provide an update at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Janice?
No, that's it.
That was it. Okay. So may I have a mover and a seconder for those meeting minutes?
I see Janice and I see Graham.
Is there anyone opposed to the approval of those minutes? If not, I see none. That item is carried. Moving on to our communications item 5.1 is a statement from the Friends of St. Giles on meeting with New Vision United Church dated June 30th, 2021. And there's one piece of correspondence before us. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations as presented?
I see Graham and I see Janice.
It's summertime, slow on the update.
And Madam Chair, if I may interrupt, the recommendation for that piece of correspondence is that it be received.
Is there any discussions on that item? Otherwise, is there anyone? Oh, Graham, you had a question?
A discussion on the item. I was at that beginning of the meeting and I left partway through because it got bogged down into an argument between Reverend Sloan and myself about me being there, because I was there as a invite with the Friends of St. Giles, and he was trying to say I was there to represent the Municipal Heritage Committee and I could subvert their meeting and bring back secret information to the committee and cause all kinds of grief. And he didn't deal well with talking to power, and it was just a real schmozzle. This letter doesn't actually represent very well how bad that meeting was. It was quite poorly set up and they didn't answer any questions. They couldn't even agree on what to call the place. It was unreal how bad it was.
Janice, you have a comment?
Just to follow up, I also was at that meeting through the chair. I was representing the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, Hamilton Region Branch, and I too left the meeting. I left the meeting because the folks of New Vision were basically advising us not to have any communication with anybody on the outside. I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I have to speak to the ACO folks, and I told Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee that I would come back with an update. So that's not transparent. I didn't understand why that was being said. So I left as well.
Well, I'm sorry that both of you had that experience with the meeting. We were hoping that there'd be some more successful engagement with the community if they were having a meeting. David, do you have your hand up?
I just had to find the right cursor here. Got a couple screens up. Yes, I stayed for the meeting, but there wasn't really much more came out of the meeting than when Janet and Graham left. It was really just a non-meeting, really. The ministry and that group wanted to just show they were in control and had no interest in really talking about the interests of the community, and they never did get around to talk about it. I think the whole meeting was really just a stalling tactic, and that's all what it was about. And there wasn't really anything achieved at that meeting, really. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for passing along those comments, all of you. So we have our motion ahead of us. Is there anyone opposed to receiving that correspondence? If not, that item is carried. Under item 6.1, we have our delegation request from Dr. Sarah Sheenan respecting the property at 85 Holton Street South, the former St. Giles Church, for today's meeting. So we have our delegation on the agenda for today, and may I have a mover and a seconder to approve that delegation?
I see Robin and I see Karen.
Okay. So we will now vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Under consent, we have consent items 7.1 and 7.2 7.2 before us. 7.1 is the heritage permit application, HP 2021-029 for the installation of exterior signage at the rear of the property for the new retail store at 5 Mill Street South in Waterdown, located in the Mill Street Heritage Conservation District. 7.1B is the heritage permit application, HP 2021-31, which is the installation of exterior signage on the main floor of 46 James Street North in Hamilton, Ward 2. And item 7.2 is our heritage permit review subcommittee minutes of June 15th, 2021. Are there any questions in regards to any of those items? If not, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive?
I see Lynn and Janice.
We will now vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We move on to our delegations, and we now will hear from our delegate, Dr. Sarah Sheenan, respecting the property at 85 Holton Street South, the former St. Giles. Welcome, Dr. Sheehan.
Thank you. Can I start my video?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a reminder that you have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, and thanks for having me here again on behalf of the Friends of St. Giles. I delegated to this committee about St. Giles in March, so today I'd like to share a brief update. As you know, in April, Council sent the question of protecting St. Giles back to planning. The weekend after the Council meeting, members of New Vision United Church published an opinion piece dismissing history as nostalgia and calling for demolition of St. Giles, apparently as a symbol of Protestant colonialism. The authors also wrote of an overdose death in the alley of their Ward II property. On social media, the minister directed readers to the piece as the congregation's official position. On June 10th, the owners held a long-awaited community info session overseen by a Vancouver PR firm. The session and its follow-up still favored demolition. The owners now refer to the property as 85 Holton and take exception to using its name, even though the building is of course older than the United Church. Despite our councillors' best efforts to coordinate a mediated session, coincidentally on June 25th, the date of this committee's last meeting, the owners have been consistently unwilling to collaborate or compromise on their plan to destroy what is undoubtedly an architectural masterpiece. At our virtual meeting, which you've read about, the Regional United Church executive would not commit to seeing the process through before applying for a third demolition permit. And a second mediated session has been postponed indefinitely. At the same time, we have seen widespread public support. The petition to save St. Giles now has over 2,500 signatures, and we're grateful for support from the Playhouse, ACO, the National Trust for Canada, and media organizations like Spacing and CBC Arts, as you see, for spreading the word. So since the 2014 merger that made St. Giles unwanted and surplus, we've been witnessing all the signs of demolition by neglect. Garbage and discarded needles litter the property, attracting pests such as rats. The maintenance person who cares for the grounds trims the lawn, but leaves the garbage. Neighbors complain of graffiti, trespassing, vandalism, and even fires in the 1922 War Memorial cairn, which was identified as a heritage feature in 2018. People are regularly sleeping in the east porch, which the owner has actually referred to as unstable. The wrought iron gates to these porches were sold in the surprise 2018 contents auction that was held online as council was preparing to consider designation that year. And 3 times recently, St. Giles was an actual crime scene. On May 31st, police were called about a possible attempted arson, the cutting of the power main on the east side of the church, and a pair of bolt cutters was found nearby. Police checked hospitals for someone with a corresponding arm injury, and they said that it could have blown the transformer for the area. Then the weekend of July 24th, police were called by a neighbor who witnessed a breaking through the side of the Memorial Chapel entrance. And again, this holiday Monday, another neighbor discovered some more tampering to the power main. And she spoke with a trespasser who had a pile of cut wires. So, as you're probably aware, Hamilton lags behind other cities in adaptive reuse of church buildings. Why, I don't know. But now Ward 3 is leading the way with two exciting church projects. Indwell's Wentworth Street Baptist project will create affordable housing while saving the church. And Paul Dethiar's Church of St. Thomas project will carve 19 apartments out of the former Anglican church. That Stinson Church was designed by Albert H. Hills, who is the architect of Centenary Methodist, home to the New Vision congregation. So with the owners failing to secure the St. Giles property, the neighbors are very concerned about fires, as with the one in Bisbee, which is another Witten design. And so I've come before you with two questions. How might staff assist around the enforcement of property standards at St. Giles? And second, given the guidelines around houses of worship, could you advise on the possibility of outreach to the ward councillor to help us to benefit from those municipal tools for protecting heritage assets? I truly value your input. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan, for that presentation. Really appreciate that. I guess now is our time for questions. Do we have any questions for our delegate? If we could start a speakers list. Does anyone have any questions? Graham?
Dr. Sheehan, have you been in contact with the ward councillor's office lately and found out what's going on with this stalled second meeting? Is there one planned or anything at all?
I heard secondhand. It's postponed until we can address this aspect of the meeting ground rules, which was showing respect to participants. So no, there is no new date, unfortunately.
So are they waiting for you to show respect, or are they waiting for the United Church to show respect to the delegations?
I think what the ward councillor says was that everyone is expected to show respect.
Oh, that day I only saw disrespect from one side.
Yeah, that hasn't been commented on directly.
Thank you.
I see a question from Janice.
Yes, through the chair to Dr. Sheehan. I really like your first question to staff in that they perhaps investigate finding a way to get more in the way of enforcement through our property standards. This isn't just a St. Giles problem. It has become a McNabb Presbyterian Church problem. It is a James Street Baptist Church problem. It is a 163 Jackson Street West Pinehurst problem. And it is ongoing, and the damage is significant. And you are so correct that it will be demolition by neglect unless there are standards and guidelines that can protect these heritage buildings. I've gone online to investigate just what property standards are, and it appears to me that the guidelines are not stringent enough. And I wonder, I know staff might not appreciate this, but I wonder, are there any municipalities that do have strengthened property standards guidelines. I personally have found our people to be very, what's the word? Very kind to those that keep doing the same thing over and over again. Personally, I think the fines are not stringent enough, and somehow there should be some mechanism that it just not be minimum property standards guidelines. So I appreciate that question, and I hope staff might be able to speak to that or to move forward with that. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Steve Robichaud.
Hi, Steve.
Good afternoon. Just listening to Janice, Ms. Brown's comments, if the committee may want to consider inviting MLE staff to attend a future meeting of the Heritage Committee to talk about the property standards bylaw and how it's applied and enforced. That may be a better format for that discussion. Otherwise, we as planning staff or through clerks, we could take back that request to the committee and ask them for a written response, but there may be consideration just to inviting or asking staff to invite MLE staff to attend a future meeting to talk about the city's property standards bylaw, vacant building registry, and the protection and enforcement issues relating to heritage buildings. That may be a more fruitful exercise rather than just going back and forth in an email exchange or something to that effect. But I will leave it to the committee to decide how they wish to proceed. Thank you.
No, that's a very good suggestion, Steve. Thank you. Is that something that the committee would like to request staff to?
Yes.
I see a thumbs up.
Yes.
Graham and Janice. So maybe what we'll do is if we can start, if there's no other questions for our delegate. Oh, Robin, did you have?
Is there something to do with the vacant building bylaw also? Is that applies here?
Steve, did you want to comment or another member of staff?
My apologies. Sorry, Robin, I'm having problems with my connection. I didn't hear your question. My apologies.
I was asking about the vacant building bylaw, and does that apply here?
Through you, Madam Chairman, my understanding is that any vacant building is required to be registered within the city of Hamilton, and that they do differentiate between designated and non-designated buildings in terms of some of the provisions of the bylaw. But that was my understanding that but I will have to follow up with our MLE staff, and then I will confirm. But I always operate under the assumption that all vacant buildings are subject to the City of Hamilton Vacant Building Registry, and then MLE takes the appropriate actions to work with the property owners on that basis. Thank you.
Robin, did you have a follow-up question to that? Just discussion, or is this a new question?
Who would register the vacant building? Who would apply for it? And who do you apply it to?
Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is the primary difference between designated and non-designated properties, and I'll have to confirm as it relates to the registry, is for a property that has no heritage status, demolition of the property is an option that can be considered to ensure compliance with the bylaw. Where clearly, as it relates to heritage resources, we don't want demolition to be an option that the property owners can use to bring the property into conformity with the bylaw. So that is the difference. And I'm not sure about a property on the registry status. I haven't dealt with that in a while, and I don't want to give the committee the incorrect information. But I will, planning staff, we will follow up with MLE staff after the meeting, and we will ask that we get a response to that one specific question in terms of designated, registry, and listed properties, and whether or not how the vacant building registry applies to buildings in each of those categories. And we will get that and ask that they provide us with a response to that we can share with all the members of committee. And we undertake to do that today. Thank you.
And perhaps I can just add through the chair. The City of Hamilton's website has some preliminary information. So what I can do is send the clerk a link that could be shared with Heritage Committee in terms of just starting to get the little bit of understanding or preliminary understanding of what that bylaw is. Excuse me, while we refer back and touch base with MLE staff to get a more detailed response. So I will forward that link to the chair.
That's great. Thank you, Anita. Do we have, before I go to second time speakers, do we have any other first time speakers?
Oh, I'm a second time, sorry.
Okay, seeing none, Janice, you had a question, and then Robin, I think you had it.
Yes, through the chair, and it's not it is obviously about St. Giles, but it's not about property standards this time. Maybe Councillor Pearson might be able to help me out. I think you do sit on planning committee, Councillor Pearson? Yeah, oh, good. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So at this point in time, committee, Hamilton Municipal Committee, prior to me, had recommended designation. Currently, we recommended designation. The last planning meeting, and I listened to that planning meeting, this was when the Councillor Nan said that she would take it upon herself and she would try to do something and bring the parties together and see if they could come to some sort of resolution. Okay, so now here we are. Nothing is happening. Will this now go back to planning? Will Councillor Nan be speaking to what has transpired? Can our committee ask again that this be designated, as that was what we had originally asked for, and it was then another motion that was put forward that it would be in Councillor Nan's hands. So that is my deliberation right now. Where are we at?
Okay, so if I can, right off the bat, say that this whole issue of St. Giles rests in the hands of planning, staff, and committee. And if I'm out of line in my answers, I'm sure Mr. Robichaud or Lorraine will correct me, but that's my understanding. Now, if I'm going on memory here because I don't have my files in front of me, I believe at the time that there was the request, the request for designation of St. Giles was denied through planning the committee and council. There was the issue, if I remember correctly, of the New Horizon church that they were putting together, and staff were involved with all that process. And maybe Mr. Robichaud can jump in, because if I'm remembering correctly, that's my recollection of what came about. So that designation of St. Giles itself was I'm not sure it was a motion put forward that it not be designated, but we dealt with the New Horizons building and the designation of that church at the corner of Main and McNabb there. Mr. Robichaud, I'm not sure if you can quantify my answer.
Through you, Madam Chairman, the ward councillor's recollection is correct, and it's my understanding, I believe clerks has been reviewing this matter as well, and they're of the advice that yes, this matter does reside with planning committee until such time as those meetings and discussions had occurred between the ward councillor and the property owner and the community, and then there was to be a report back to planning committee at the conclusion of those discussions and conversations. And as such, ownership of this file is with the planning committee at this point in time, based on the minutes of the disposition of this matter from earlier this year and last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. And I know that it is that Councillor Nan is working on this. I don't know what her scheduling or where she's at on it, but I know it rests in her hands with staff and the proponents and the community interests.
Oh, it's Robin.
Robin, did you have a question?
That was my question, was where the status of the designation was, because my memory is that this committee recommended it to be designated for the second time.
Robin, it's Lorraine from Clerk's office. If I can interrupt for just a moment, can you put your microphone down towards your mouth, please, so we can hear you?
Yeah.
Thank you
there.
so much.
So that's what I was going to ask, the same thing. Okay. Where the status of the designation, because I thought the designation went to council, not in the hands of Nan.
No, Nan.
And if it's in the hands of Nan, where is the report?
To
No,
clarify, please,
okay,
if I may,
yeah.
the, the matter is with the planning committee and with staff.
So, and just to add, and just so you know, because Councillor Nan is working with the applicants and the community, and that's in her bailiwick, in her ward. So she's dealing with that, and she will certainly be involved with whatever comes back to planning committee.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. And Janice, do you want a final, just wrap up question? Oh, you're on mute, Janice.
Okay, sorry. I must have hit that button or somebody hit it on my behalf. Yes, just a follow up to this whole planning and whose hands it's in. How long, maybe Mr. Robichaud could ask this question, answer this question through the chair. How long can this sort of stay in limbo, being in Councillor Nan's hand, where I'm not sure exactly what's happening, because I know Friends of St. Giles hasn't got any follow-up, but who knows what the other people have gotten. And having said that, in the meantime, we know the building is not designated and a demolition could be called for at any time. This is very concerning, with the fact that we've got this just sitting here. And I think if somebody asks for a demolition and it's not designated, it can happen within, what, 10 days? Again, I'm not sure of those numbers. So that's my follow-up. Those are my concerns.
Steve, did you have any comment to follow up on that?
Sorry, I was just looking through Madam Chairman to the looking for an email, but my understanding is that there was no time frame was attached to the council approval or minutes on this matter, so there is no sunset or quote unquote drop dead date under which this matter is to be resolved. So it is open in terms of the amount of time before this matter will be resolved, in terms of when the councillor will be having those conversations, discussions, and that reporting back. Thank you. So the short answer is it's an indefinite period of time that the ward councillor has to deal with this matter. Thank you.
It's interesting.
So with this matter, St. Giles is with planning, as Lorraine had clarified and staff have clarified. It is on our list of endangered buildings, so we continue to get updates, and as we've been doing is following up as best we can with groups. Karen, you have a question?
Just to clarify, so the file is with planning right now. If a application for demolition comes in, does that go to planning or where does that go?
The normal process would be followed if there was a demolition permit, so that we would report to Heritage Committee, who then reports to planning if there was an application was to come in for a demolition permit. That is and we would continue to follow that process.
Okay, so even if there's no, like even if it's a 10-day turnaround, since it's not designated?
The registry provides the additional protection. It doesn't have to be a designated property in terms of dealing with it. So as long as the building is on the registry, it provides us with additional protection. Listed properties have no status.
It's not designated.
Or on the registry.
If it's, sorry, then if it's, yeah. And then in that case, it would be a standard building permit would be issued, and there would be no notification would be given under that protocol. Other than to the ward councillor upon receipt of a demolition permit application. However, my understanding is that the owner of the property has indicated that it's not their intent to demolish it in the short term, and that they publicly stated that. So the owner would have to then sort of be a significant change in what they've already publicly stated in terms of any plans to demolish the property.
Robin?
Can this committee recommend that the building go on the registry and or can this committee recommend designation again?
Councillor Pearson.
Sorry, and staff may just elaborate, but I have to recollect when the request came forward for designation the first time, because I don't believe we can deal with an item that's been voted on twice in one term of council without 2/3 vote of those that supported the recommendation, voting to lift it and put it back on the table. Maybe Madam Clerk or staff can clarify.
If I may.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
It's Lorraine Kohler from the clerk's office. So with Heritage Report 21002, the request or the recommendation was made and amended on the former St. Giles Church. So again, as I said before, the matter is with planning. It is out of Heritage hands at this moment. I've sent you in the chat the wording of the recommendation as it was amended at council. And so where we stand with this now, and Heritage stands there as well, because they sent this recommendation off in February, I believe. Sorry, no, it would have been March. That the designation be referred back to planning, and that the owner be invited to attend a future planning meeting to present their proposed approach and concept prior to making a formal application for planning approval. So Heritage has already made their recommendation and council has amended that. So Councillor Pearson is correct in that point. At that meeting, there was some history and background, so the committee was able to put its recommendations forward as it did. But as I said, those recommendations were then amended at council and referred back to planning.
Thank you for clarifying, Lorraine. Janice, is it a follow-up question to what we just discussed?
Yeah, it's for clarification because I think I may have misunderstood, and this is through the chair to Councillor Pearson. Did you say or did I misunderstand or mishear that this committee, Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee, had made this request to designate twice in the same council term? Because I was thank you. I misunderstood that because I was not on that council. Thank you. Got it.
I'm saying that you can, so if staff, council makes a decision on an item, the decision is done for the term. If someone wants to bring it back, it can only be brought back by 2/3 vote of those that supported it. So that would be the process if this was to be put back on the table. It can't be back. Heritage Committee can't bring forward another motion and request to designate St. Giles. Okay.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, Robin, I think this might be the last question on this item. Okay. Robin?
If we can't bring forward the designation, why not put it on the registration?
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify, was the original our last request, did it not include register as well? So that's what was modified by council. Lorraine, maybe you're able to reference.
Just give me a moment, please. The original recommendation was that staff be directed to take appropriate action to designate 679 Main Street East and 85 Holton Street South, including preparation and giving the required public notice of the notice of intention to designate and a statement of cultural heritage and value or interest and description of heritage attributes. So that was the original recommendation made by Heritage that was then amended by council. And just as a side note, I would ask the delegates not to use the chat function to discuss matters with the committee. The chat function is for members and for staff to be able to communicate and assist the chair. Thank you.
So the request to add to the register was not request at that time. It was designation as the request.
So can we or can we not?
Robin, did you have a comment that you were?
I would like to recommend that we put it, make the
Yes.
request for the registration.
At least for protection.
Absolutely. I'll
Second
need a
it.
seconder.
Madam Chair, I'm looking to staff to give me some clarification on their processes so that I can make sure that this is happening correctly. I just don't want the committee to have something overturned if we haven't dealt with it at this meeting.
Steve, are you available to provide some clarification, or Anita?
Through the chair, I think what I can add at this time is normally when we add a property to the register, the recommendation is very specific. So we differentiate normally between adding a property to the register and designating a property. So I'm not sure, not to put the clerk on the spot, but I mean, I think that we usually treat them as different actions. So my opinion, if that matters at all, is that the original recommendation only spoke to designation and not to adding a property to the register. So they could be, like I said, they could be looked at as two different actions and two different recommendations. But I'm not sure if that assists you, Lorraine, in providing some further clarification to the committee.
It does, pardon the interruption and through the chair. Yes, it does provide the clarification I was looking for. I wanted to make sure that we didn't move forward with something that was procedurally, but also as far as planning processes and heritage processes incorrect. If the two items are different, then I do see them. I also agree and see them as different. If this committee wishes to put the property on the register and staff have informed me that that is a different process or another process, that is permissible.
Okay. Okay, so to clear up this item, I think we need to go through our administrative motions. So let's deal with the first one. So right now we have to receive our delegates' information and presentation. So may I have a mover and a seconder to receive Dr. Sheehan's delegation presentation?
I see Lynn and I see Robin.
Okay, we'll now vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, we've approved the receipt of that information. Our second motion is going to be in regards to asking staff to request MLE staff to present an update on the bylaws for vacant buildings. So may I have a mover and a seconder for that request?
I see Janice and I see Robin.
As we vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. And now we'll deal with the committee's recommendation to move forward with the register. If I could have someone just provide clarification as to what the request they'd like to see moving forward. Graham, would you like to?
Oh, I got a comment. Okay. I'm pasting in the meeting notes from a council meeting where they dealt with the registry of St. Giles and it was turned down. April 14th, 2021, page 6 of the minutes starting and going on to page 7. So it's copied into the chat.
Through the chair, thank you very much for that, Graham.
You're welcome.
Okay, so in that interest then, it's not something that can be dealt with again.
Madam Chair, if I may, through you, Graham, which minutes is this from?
That's council minutes, April 14th, 2021.
Thank you very much for that.
Page 6.
So then, as we can see in part subsection C, that the property has been added to the Municipal Heritage Register as a property of cultural heritage significance.
No, it was defeated by a vote of
It was
5-9.
defeated.
Oh, and that's why
Yep.
I have to read all of it.
Yep, was defeated.
Okay.
Oh
So
my
we-
God.
So that's how I knew we couldn't deal with this again, this meeting.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Even if I did misread it, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome.
Just
Yep, Janice, go ahead.
Graham, could you do me a favor through the chair? I would really like a copy of that. If you could send that through to me.
Yep.
Including who voted and how they
It's right-
voted.
yeah,
Thank you.
It's all
Janice,
in there.
I'm reading it. Yep.
I'm
Thank
going to
you. Got it.
Janice, I'm going to suggest that you go to the website and get the council minutes for yourself so that you'll be able to see the entire piece. That's April 14th, 2021, council minutes. And you can pick those up off the city's website.
So we've had our two motions. There's no further action that we can take right now. So it's in planning's hands. Again, the property is on our list of properties, endangered properties and buildings and landscapes. So we can keep track of that on a monthly basis and ask for staff update if we can. And again, we've made the recommendation for to learn more about the vacant building watch. Okay, so we'll now move on to our next item under our general information and other business. Item 13.1 is our buildings and landscapes. At this time, we'll discuss our buildings and landscapes. So if anyone would say it by raising your hand, we'll start a speakers list if you have any updates on your properties. So I see Janice, I see Karen, Graham. So we'll start with Janice. And
Okay, through the chair, 13.1A, just gonna have to put my glasses on when we get to that section. Number 7, James Street Baptist Church, 98 James Street South. I sent a lengthy email to Luke, and I do know he was away for a bit, so I'm hoping he gets back to me. But I have major concern, and many of us in the neighborhood have had the same concern. That property has yet to be cleaned up. And what by cleaned up, the whole back end is filled with boulders and rocks and leftover bits and pieces. And in November 2019, Luke Wynut, the project manager, said to me that the issue was with the transom window that had gone down, I guess, in a storm. And nobody in the Heritage Department knew what to do with that window. And that was the reason that the property could not be cleaned up. I'm asking about that now. It is now August 2021. I have no idea what's happened to the transom window. I don't know if it's there. If it is, I can't see it, or maybe it's been moved. And I would like to know why that property cannot be cleaned up. It has been sitting for years, and that's a major thoroughfare. So that's that with regard to that property. Television City is an ongoing issue, and through Heritage staff and Councillor Farr, we were able to get that property cleaned up. However, it is attracting undesirables. The neighbors around Westonford Place and Hunter Street have been complaining to the DNA. We've got some rotting wood, and we do know that there has been some testing going both on the Caroline side and on the Hunter Street side. So if staff have any information on those two properties, it certainly would be appreciated. Moving forward, good news, 13.1B, Council ratified that 5456 Hess Street South be added to the work plan and as a high priority. So that's the good news story. Thank you. Those are my reports.
thank you for that, Janice. We now have Karen.
Thank you. So my report is on 64 Pat Street in Dundas. There appears to be a new tenant, and it's in part of the building, not the whole thing. And so they have done some renovations on the outside, probably on the inside, but I was just standing outside. They've put in a new doorway in the current opening where it used to be essentially, boarded up, and now there's a nice new door entranceway. They didn't do any brick removal or anything, so they've retained what was already there, the opening that was currently there. They also put in a new window, and that they also retained the current opening. It's got a nice archway over top, and it appears to even have the same pane set up as the old one that was really, really in terrible shape. So for a building that's not designated, there appears doing a very nice job at retaining some of the old historic looking elements for this piece of it. There's also a little bit of painting done, but in a very discreet area around the back, a bit of decorative painting. So I was pleased to see this. It looks quite good. So, and that's my update. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Karen. And next we have Graham.
Yeah, just my favorite, the Long and Bisbee. Went by several times now where they've broken in and dealing with Stacy Kurakowski. She's been excellent at getting staff and the property owner to get it boarded back up again and secure. So at last I looked a couple of days ago, it was secure.
That's good. And Chuck, I believe you had an update.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My update is not for my own properties, so I don't have an update on my own properties, but I have an update on 13.1.a, the red properties, items 4 and 5, that's 18 to 28 King Street East. And this is based on recent work at the Heritage Permit Review Subcommittee. As many of you know, there's been a detailed proposal, and there's a lot of history behind a significant redevelopment of the properties. After lengthy consultations, multiple meetings, including a pre-consultation and questions going back and forth with the developer and its representatives, the Permit Review Subcommittee recommended approval of the permit for this property. So this has obviously been a long and winding road for this. It was, by the way, it was a unanimous approval and included people who were involved with the Friends of the Gore on the subcommittee. And, you know, I think it's a very good proposal. You know, it's you know, the important thing for this committee, I think, right, is that while there's still significant work to do before actually building takes place, principally a conservation plan and an easement gets negotiated. That's a couple of the conditions. And there's also a penalty if the facade, if some of the work results in the destruction of the facade. As well. So assuming all those conditions get settled soon, there should be significant activity on those buildings soon. The project plan is to start work this fall and work through the winter throughout next year and have it done in 2023. I hope I got that right. The timeline is aggressive, but we should start seeing activity relatively soon on that property. So this is Will's property, and I don't think Will's here today. But Will's property to monitor, but I know all of us pass that property on a regular basis, so it's worth keeping an eye on, and hopefully things progress quickly on that, given how long it's been before both the Heritage Committee and Council and been an object of interest for the public for so long. Anyway, that's my update.
Thank you for that, Chuck. Yeah, I watched the meeting online, and it looked like some very good discussion with the project team, and hopefully it's some good moves moving forward to see a better future for those properties. Robin, did you have a question in regards to that update?
Yes, I was down there on Sunday, and I believe what the number is where Chester's was. Is that the same building? Just the address is Yeah. 18 to 28 King Street East. I always get confused on what was there in the past because there's been so many changes over the years.
The Honeydew is the best one to remember.
Yeah. But the two buildings that I'm speaking of was used to be the Chesters, and both those buildings, the one to the west of Chesters, both of them have no roof.
So I think that if that's the properties, Robin, they're being monitored, and I say work will begin soon. So, okay. Are there any other property updates, Robin?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm asking about the Akmar Gatehouse again, and where the status is for that. And also, Akmar has had ongoing vandalism, and that's been taken over by the city staff to monitor that. So I would like to know where the status of the Gatehouse is.
Do we have a member of staff that can provide an update?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, my camera. Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Robin, we are currently tackling our work plan in an appropriate manner, and we're looking at working on that through the rest of the ones that are in the work plan for this year, and focusing on proceeding in due course.
You have a follow-up question, Robin?
Just another update on the Beach Canal Lighthouse and the cottage. In the paper, there was an announcement that the federal government is transferring the ownership over to the Harbor Commission on one I don't know, stipulation. And that stipulation is that the lighthouse be moved away from the bridge and put between the two bridges, about 50 yards south. So there is a stipulation in the transfer of ownership. And to move the lighthouse would be a huge job. And because it's a designated property, we would have some say to that. Just an update.
Thank you, Robin. Any other updates on our properties? Before we vote on receiving this information, do we have any properties that members would like to be added to the list, if there's any properties of concern? If not, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the updates on these properties?
I see Robin and I see Karen.
And as we vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to our item 13.2, which is a verbal update on the plaquing process at the City of Hamilton. So we have Christopher Redford here, who is the Heritage Presentation Coordinator, and he's here to discuss that plaquing process. Welcome, Christopher.
There we go. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to give you an oral update on the process. The Plaques and Markers program of the Tourism and Culture Division currently facilitates three types of heritage plaque: commemorative, heritage recognition, and designated property. Broadly speaking, the commemorative and heritage recognition plaques are what you would call picture and story plaques, or photograph and story plaques, and designated property plaques are for built heritage. The difference between the commemorative and the heritage recognition is merely one of size, pertaining to longer stories or shorter stories, or more bounded stories with the smaller version. Designated property plaques, as you folks would well know, are the metal ovals which mark properties designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. A fourth part, in keeping with the plaques and markers, a fourth type might be called one-offs or special orders. These have included custom-made ones, larger cast metal plaques in boulders, for the St. Clair Heritage Conservation District, Clara's Climb at the top of Stedman Hill, International Harvester at the Museum of Steam and Technology, composite plaques that involve both cast metal and interpretive panels like the one for Sir William Osler on Osler Drive at the Union Cemetery. There are numerous others. And right now, it's rather exciting. We're waiting for a quote on a new type that we may pursue. And that you may have seen them panels which are transparent, which have etched in them photographs or drawings of an earlier landscape placed on the landscape in such a way that you can look through and see the modern landscape. These have been used with great effect, particularly to bring to life archaeologically discovered structures where you can sort of virtually put them on the landscape. So I'm personally very excited about that. Basic criteria for consideration have included the association, of course, of storied events with a specific location or of a noteworthy person with a specific location. Effective illustration of a significant pattern in the cultural, social, economic, industrial development of Hamilton, either in pre-contact or colonial periods. The association of a building or structure with an event or a person of great significance. Streetscapes or heritage conservation districts. Those are all things that are taken into account. So if those are the ones that get made, they get made essentially via 4 avenues. First, three commemorative plaques, the larger picture and story plaques, are made using our own internal budget each year. At February, at Heritage Day in City Council, in City Chambers, and a plaquing theme is announced, and then from the end of February to the Victoria Day weekend, we accept any citizen's suggestion for the plaque topics that might be considered based upon that theme. A theme could be, industrial Hamilton or sports history or whatever have you. The proposed topics are considered by an informal adjudication committee, which selects the 3 successful ones. The committee changes. We've done it twice up until COVID's intervention. But the group has included the manager of Heritage Resource Management, 1 member of City Council, 1 citizen volunteer, 1 educator, and 1 curatorial staff from one of the city museums. These are the only plaques currently budgeted for. All others are made on a fee-for-service basis with the fees listed on the Plaques and Markers website. The second avenue for production are, and this is for the vast majority of interpretive materials that do get produced, are based on other budgets, such as parks and cemeteries, landscape architects with public works, area ratings monies, and other ward monies at the request of council's offices. Some are also sponsored by external persons and groups. A recent example that you may have heard of that we're rather proud of this year, the latter was a plaque entitled Italian Canadians as Enemy Aliens, which described the process by which Italian Hamiltonians were carted off as enemy aliens to a camp in Petawawa between 1940 and 1945. And this was sponsored by the Sons and Daughters of Italy, LiUNA, and included input from the descendants of these poor individuals who were carted off. The third process, and one that has grown in recent years, is the production of plaques which are made conditions of development by planners which must be met by the developers. At present, 2 of these are in production and a third is looming on the horizon. The 2 in production are one at Cardinal Heights subdivision to mark the old Cardinal Heights School, which was torn down, designed by architect Stanley Roscoe, and it was torn down, of course, to build subdivision. The second is the evolution of Hamilton's airports at the site of the first municipal airport at the Roxboro development. We had pointed out when that one came up that there already was an aviation history plaque adjacent to that site. So the focus shifted towards the evolution of Hamilton's airport specifically, rather than a more general treatment. And the one that looms on the horizon pertains to the industrial history at the Studebaker Crescent development. So those are quite interesting, and they're nice to see them as conditions of development. A fourth process involves replacing heritage-related plaques and panels made in the past by others. We are quite frequently now asked to do this. Our plaquing program was not and is not today the only means by which heritage panels get placed in the city. Parks and Cemeteries, the Conservation Authority, Bruce Trail Association, the Niagara Escarpment Commission, and others have and continue to make heritage panels. But these are often one-off sources of funding for them, and as the years go by, we are then asked to step in order to replace them when they become decrepit. In order to control workload and costs, our policy is to generally say yes if they are human history related. Natural history, not so much. We stay away from plants and birds and grasses and things. But we say yes on the condition that they be replaced using our template, which you may have seen with the blue border and the city crest in one corner. And also on the condition that the cost of the replacement is borne by those requesting that we absorb them into our inventory. And then subsequently, they are our responsibility. We will clean them, we will replace them on our budget. The most recent example of this involves 12 interpretive plaques, which landscape architects had funded about 15 years ago when Victoria Park underwent an overhaul. So we replaced them again using our template, but this process is not a bad thing because it highlights the reason that we tend to now favor the high density poly plaques that have a 10 to 15 year lifespan rather than the permanent sort of stone and cast plaques, because it gives you the chance to insert textural changes, find new graphics, crisper images, which we did for the ones in Victoria Park. And also, I think very importantly, given the nature of our changing times, casting things in metal and sticking them in stones makes revisiting the subject matter somewhat more difficult. And so we really like these poly panels so that you can update them and change them as time goes on. Of course, this comes at a budgetary consideration as well. And most importantly for me, metal thieves, which have been the bane of our existence for the last 4 or 5 years, don't go after the high density laminate panels the way they go for the cast metal ones. Also, the changing nature of our times involves a sort of a fifth process, which is in the process of taking form, and it regards plaques and markers which tell the stories of Black, Indigenous, and other persons of color told by them at their initiation and in the way that is culturally appropriate for them. This will be defined and informed by ongoing council mandated consultations and surveys of markers and monuments, and I await on that process because I feel we have been somewhat remiss in addressing or facilitating topics such as that, and I think it would be a good idea to move on it. So if those are the 5 ways in which it would be processed. For each plaque project, a working group is established dedicated to the topic at hand, rather than a sitting group that deals with various topics over time as it comes through. An example would be the case of plaques that are to be installed in Waterdown over the next year. The working group in that regard includes the counselor, local educator, BIA representative, Flamborough Archive staff, Alyssa Golden, and myself. So built into the process of creating these working groups that come together for the purpose of that one topic or that one group of topics, community partners are built into the process, and topical experts are built into the process as you go. Consensus within the working group is where final approval typically lies when it is not on our budget. For the 3 that are submitted by citizens for our programming piece for Heritage Day, we still use the same group approach, but final approval rests with the manager of Heritage Resource Management. The budget is and has been for many years $10,000 a year, so quite modest. And over the last few years, the heightened costs have made it somewhat challenging. we commissioned or had a contract for a survey of heritage-related markers on city-owned property, and this was entered into the inward-facing database of assets within the city. There are 203 sites with heritage plaques listed as being there. And to put that in perspective, Victoria Park has 14 plaques, but it's just one site. So the number of potential things that will have to be replaced or dealt with, as you know, is out there. And invariably, regardless of who has made them, they come back to us and we have to replace them or deal with them. So there has been a stress on resources to some extent. And that's it. If you have questions, I would be happy to entertain them.
Thank you for that, Christopher. I really do appreciate that. If I could, I know there's probably questions from our members. If I could just have everyone raise their hand that would like to ask questions, and we'll get a speakers list going. Robin? All right. So Robin, just a reminder, we have 5 minutes for our speakers during presentation. So if you'd like to ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Chris. Haven't seen you for a while.
No.
You went through all the processes of all the plaques, but you did not mention the designation plaques for this committee. The Municipal Heritage Committee has designated properties, and we put designated plaques on them. Where is that process? What is the budget? And how many can you do a year? It used to be 5 a year. The budget was the poster budget. And you didn't mention any of the designated properties, the backload and the new designations.
The designated properties, I mean, I mentioned their existence, but the process as of 3 years ago, under the direction of the manager of Heritage Resource Management, after looking at some other municipalities, was to acknowledge the limited resources to use the budget that exists for the 3 plaques that are made, the larger plaques to be made, submitted by citizens through the Heritage Day process, and then with the money that is eaten up in terms of the programming that's associated with them, with purchase of high resolution images for them, cleaning graffiti off of them, and building in some buffer for all of these others that are going to be coming at us. It was noted that the earliest of these commemorative and heritage recognition plaques are starting to get on in years. They're going to have to be replaced, and there'll have to be a budget for that. The decision was taken at that time by the head of Heritage Resource Management that we would go with those 3, and others would, as is the case in Toronto and other municipalities, to a basically nonprofit fee-for-service, so that if other plaques, including designated property plaques, are to be had, they are to be had at the cost of those applying for them.
What happened to the poster budget?
I don't know what you mean by poster budget. Through my time, the budget for plaquing is a line item within the Heritage Resource Management budget, and has been since I've been there. I will look into it and see if I can find out what that poster budget would be. But as far as for the decade that I've been involved, there's just been a plaquing budget with $10,000 allocated to it.
So you're saying that to designate a property and get a plaque on it, the Municipal Heritage Committee has to pay for it?
No, the person who owns the property has to pay for it. The price includes the plaque and the installation of the plaque by individuals that contractor hired by us to do that.
That goes against the designation. The owner does not get anything for designation except a plaque. And so if you're going to charge people for a plaque, you're never going to get the backload updated or the new designations plaqued.
Well, and as I say, from a programming perspective, there are pressures that came to bear, and that's why the decision was taken by the head of HRM at that time. But the two things are distinct. I mean, a property is no less designated in the absence of a plaque than it is with one. And in other municipalities, you do pay to have your plaque provided.
Councillor Pearson, you had a question or comment?
My apologies. So I just want to clarify, Robin raised the issue of the poster budget line item. That was totally, if I recall correctly, being standing on this committee for some time now, that was to deal with the posters that were printed and sold as advertising and fundraising for Heritage Committee. That had nothing to do with the plaquing. So I don't know that I want to have a Christopher, go into something that we already know. That's a line item that this was for Heritage Committee for our posters that were produced. And I'm trying to remember which ones they were. The windows at the Piggott, if I remember correctly.
The doors.
Chairs and the doors, correct. So
And-
those are the ones that I recall. Mhm.
And that fund, it was referred to as a publication or printing fund. So anything that we sold as part of the posters or
Right.
heritage volumes, that money circulated back into that account for us to do additional projects or printing, and that's also some monies going towards our awards. And again, Councillor Pearson is correct that it did not involve plaquing. That was a separate.
Correct. And maybe just for committee's information and knowledge, Christopher said, number one, don't worry about checking that line item. But the plaquing, what's the average cost now of the plaquing? I know we don't do the bronze ones anymore. They're what are they? Not a plastic, composite, right? But what are the costs that are being looked at as for a plaque now?
For a plaque now, you are looking for the three of the commemorative type that we make each year. You're looking at about $1,650 American, because they're brought from New York State, and that does not include the cost of the installation. It doesn't include the cost of if we get images from HPL, we purchase high resolution images, trying to support their archives and so forth. It doesn't include any of the programming that would go into their unveiling or anything like that. So the money really doesn't go now where it used to. And if we went back to the way that it originally had been, we actually sent them out to a middleman who would then do all of the graphic design and all of the production and all of the installation, and the price was even more. Since we're doing the graphic stuff in-house now, but as was noted, if somebody comes into my position at some point in the future without the graphical skills, which are not technically required of the job, you would have increased costs because you would have to be sending it out once again to do it. So there are a constellation of pressures on it that came to bear in HRM taking that decision.
Right, thank you for that. And I know, Madam Chair, and I apologize for taking committee's time, but I think I've always felt that it was a bit confusing, and not taking away from Christopher, but Christopher deals with the plaquing, all of the plaquing. And I've always thought that Heritage Committee designated properties, not being parks and, the bigger ones that Christopher's speaking of, or items and issues like the issue of the Italian war, things like that. I always felt that the plaquing fees for just heritage properties should have been under the umbrella of Heritage Committee. That's how it was handled in Stony Creek days. We had a budget, a line item. We knew that we could, in those days, they were brass plaques. They were about $400 a piece. And we had a budget item of approximately $1,500, I would say, because we always targeted approximately 3 properties a year to be plaqued. So I'm not sure how the committee wants to deal with this going forward. If there's a way we should be putting some policy or procedure in place, But I think it might help because unfortunately we have a tremendous number of heritage properties that are not designated, or not designated, sorry, not signed. And I agree with Christopher. I mean, I know it's an issue as far as costing, but I'm not going to say that I think I understand where Robin's coming from, is that how do you ask a property owner that their property's been designated? We're asking them to allow us to recognize them for that. And all we can contribute is a plaque. It's frustrating. The other part of that too is, remember, there are properties that we're pursuing designation on that the property owners aren't supporting. So they're never going to pay for a plaque. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And maybe it's just words of, thoughts for everybody to think about. But I understand both sides of the concern here.
Yeah. Christopher, just can you clarify for the designation plaques, what's the current pricing for those plaques?
Including with the installation, and I suppose we could consider having them without the cost of installation included, but $800 with the installation from the professional vendor who does it.
Okay. And I don't know whether Christopher, you're the right person or a member of Heritage Planning. Just how is this information communicated to a property owner once designations happened? Is that part of the letter package that's going to the property owner? Or if someone can just clarify for the committee just how we reach out to the property owners.
This is something that we had discussed. It's kind of fallen off the plate with everything that's happened in the last year and a half, I guess. But the idea of having a method to perhaps the committee, your committee, finding a way to communicate with the community of designated property owners in order to get the information out there. I mean, it's on the city web page for the plaques and markers. They can see it and find it, but that's only if they look for it themselves. Finding a way of communicating through the committee would be a good idea.
Okay. Robin, did you have a follow-up question?
You asked that question. $800 is the one. Now, again, it's very confusing as to who does what and what. And if you have an $800 plaque that is going to be on a designated property, the Municipal Heritage Committee has to write it and come to you to have it produced. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. That would be a situation where heritage planners and myself would simply look at the reasons for designation, the standard formula on the designation plaques involving the year, the style, the brief description, and architect's name if available, given certain constraints of number of characters that you can do. It's not particularly onerous, and staff could easily come up with that. But I would welcome if the Municipal Heritage Committee wished to come up with the text for all of them, and then as they might come in future years, it would be ready to go. Yeah.
Now, in the past, there was a joint plaquing committee, and there was the Hamilton Historical Board and the Municipal Heritage Committee because of the separation of the plaques of the larger plaques that you're talking about and plaques for the designation properties. The Historical Board has been disbanded, and that doesn't make it that the Joint Plaquing Committee has been disbanded, which means we are still part, the Municipal Heritage Committee, of the Plaquing Committee. Of the Joint Plaquing Committee, we are now a Plaquing Committee. So the Municipal Heritage Committee should take over the responsibility of writing and producing the designated heritage plaques, maybe using your expertise as how to produce them, but that goes back to the problem of budget. Where do we get the money?
So before we have too much more discussion on that, maybe I could ask a question of Anita. Anita, in the background, there's a heritage review going on, is there not, in regards to processes and what recommendations the heritage planning group is hoping to put forward? Is some of these questions that we're bringing up right now, is that part of that report?
Through the chair, you're correct in the fact that we are looking at all of our processes. So registry process, heritage permit process, designation process. I don't recall plaquing being there being any specific recommendations. And I have to admit, in my time here, plaquing hasn't really been dealt with through the heritage committee. So I don't know the history certainly as well as Robin does. But I think that's a conversation that perhaps staff can have with the clerks in terms of, or with Heritage Committee in terms of how that sort of subcommittee can either be recreated or resurrected, I think is the word I was looking for. I'm not sure administratively how that would happen, but no, in the plaquing wasn't really a process that was being reviewed through our processes. I mean, that, as Christopher sort of explained, that sort of resides in a different division within the Planning and Economic Development Department. So we deal with the designations up until the point of the designation bylaw being passed, and then anything related to the plaquing would then come from the work that Christopher does.
Janice? Oh, Janice, you're on mute.
Yes, through the chair, maybe I don't know if it's Christopher or Robin that might be able to answer this question. Can you tell me how many heritage plaques for our built heritage for designations that the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee has done are outstanding? How many have not been plaqued or produced? Anybody know?
That is something which I believe Alyssa Golden would be probably in the best position to
And there's Alyssa now.
Hi, folks. Alyssa Golden here in Heritage Resource Management. Actually, that is something that I'm currently working on. We've just recently developed a layer of historical plaques, and I'm in the process of populating that. We have some baseline information from more recent plaquing that's taken place. We do have some historical plaquing data that we still need to input into our databases. This includes all of the former municipalities and townships prior to amalgamation. Those would have been separate plaquing initiatives. So I don't have a good idea of the numbers at the moment, but that is something that we're working on.
We'll continue to follow up. Thank you, Alyssa.
At the time that the joint plaquing was dissolved, I believe there was over 50 old designations that still needed to be done. And the rule at the time was that the new designations would be done first by the budget, and then anything left over by the budget would be take on one of the past designations and put it on an old designation. And I believe it's probably close to 75 to 100 now.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of past.
Yes, it is.
So I'm just wondering if we need to start and look at what the process would be moving forward for designation plaques. Maybe this is something that we could forward along to maybe policy and design, just initially to sort of get some information put together and some sort of recommendation. I don't know if anyone has any comments or thoughts on that.
Or
Designation plaques fall under the education
that's
of
what I was going to say.
designations to the public. And to have a plaque on a designated property, it tells the public that this is a special building. And so I believe it should be under the education subcommittee or a separate subcommittee of this municipal heritage committee so that they could work directly with staff and know what's the designation and produce them through Christopher. Now, the other thing too is that we still got to find where the budget comes from.
So that item can be forwarded along to education to do a review and then come back with some comments.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. And then as it maybe part of the recommendation moving forward then is to have a separate group that would focus just on that. So So we'll get some information gathered. So I guess coming from this, we can make a motion to move that item over to our working group for review. But so do we just going back to Christopher's presentation? Do we have any other questions that we'd like to ask about the historical plaques or what's moving forward for the coming year? Robin?
Is it possible, Christopher, that of the 3 plaques that are coming forward by the public, one of those plaques would be allotted to the Municipal Heritage Committee so that it is a kitty that starts our budget for designation plaques?
That is something which would be not at my level, but above my level, and I can certainly raise that question with my supervisors.
I think that's a wonderful way to get started. That where this backlog of designation plaques that need to be done, it's a lot of money, and to charge the designated owners of the property is basically an insult, and so we need to find that budget so that we can honor the people that are designating their properties, not charge them.
So I think a couple of things. If we can have, if there's any other questions for Christopher. Christopher, did you want to do an update for the coming year? What projects are being worked on for the heritage plaques?
Well, the quite a number of them. Been working with counselors' offices for Waterdown, for plaque about the namesake of the park on the mountain, the ones that I mentioned, the airport, the Valley Inn Bridge as a condition or as an adjunct to the replacement of the Valley Inn Bridge. 2 panels, one on the Hamilton side and one on the Burlington side to be made.
So very busy in your department.
Yes, yeah, and stretched as a result of it.
No, we appreciate that work that's put into all of that design work. If there's no other questions for Christopher, thank you very much for the presentation today. It was really good in getting us talking about what we need to do as next steps. And so if I can have a motion to receive the presentation from staff. If I can have a mover and a seconder.
I see Lynn and I see Robin.
As we vote, if there's anyone opposed. Seeing none, that item is carried. And then now we'll deal with the motions coming from this. So if there's a recommendation to forward this on to a working group, if I could have that motion put forward.
I'll put that motion forward.
I see Robin and Karen.
And so that's to ask the Education and Communication Working Group to follow up on information in regards to designation plaquing. So is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. And then is there direction to city staff that we'd like them to follow up on? We should clarify that in a motion. Robin?
Just the ask is for the budget of one of the plaques for the 1 year that we could get started on this backlog.
Okay.
Just a request.
Lorraine, does that give you enough clarification?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And if I could have a mover and I've got Robin as a mover, and do I have a seconder for that motion?
I see Lynn.
Okay. Is there anyone opposed to that? Seeing none, that item is carried. Thank you very much, Christopher. We appreciate you taking the time today. Take care.
Take care.
Right. We now move on to our item 13.3 is our staff work plan. So we will now have an update from staff.
Hi, everyone.
Hello there.
This is Amber Knowles. I'm the Heritage Planner for the urban area. I would just like to update, and I believe this was mentioned earlier, but 54 and 56 Hess Street South, Council ratified on June 23rd, 2021, that they be added to the work plan, the designation work plan. So they've been added to that list under high priority. So those are the updates for the urban area, and I will pass to Chloe Richet, the Cultural Heritage Planner for the rural area update.
Thanks, Amber. Through the chair, it's Chloe here. So on June 23rd, Council approved the addition of 215 King Street West, Dundas, to the Municipal Heritage Register and to the staff work plan for designation. The notice has been mailed out to the property owners regarding Council's approval, and the local councillor has been notified. Thank you.
Yes, and I guess in addition to what Chloe said, for the properties on Hess, the owners have been, a letter has been mailed to them, and the councillor has been informed as well for those properties.
That's great. Is there any other staff update? Any other properties we need to? So in regards to the work plan, do members of the committee have any questions? If I could have a raise of hands. So we'll start our speakers list. And again, a 5-minute reminder for speakers. So I've got Karen and then Janice. Karen, go ahead.
Thank you. Just had a question. So when these new properties are added to the work plan, do they get added to the end of the list? Is that, or is it a different list than the designation work plan? Just wondering because the designated, okay, go ahead. You can answer. Thank you.
Oh, sorry for the interruption. Through the chair, they do, it depends on which you're speaking of. So if it's, they were, for the Hess properties, for example, they were added to the designation work plan. The property Chloe was speaking of was added to the register and then also added to the designation work plan. So if the properties were added to the designation work plan, they aren't added to the end, they're added depending on their priority. So for the Hess properties, they're high priority. So they were put on the work plan potential for 2021. As I'm sure the committee members have noted, there are many properties on the 2021 high priority work plan. So staff will need to look further into prioritizing within that high priority work plan list for this year.
Through the chair, I'd also add that the property I mentioned, 215 King Street, is also part of the year 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Janice?
Yes, through the chair to any of the planners that might be able to answer. It is now August 2021, and this year comes to an end in 4 or 5 months. So what realistically do you see being completed between now and December 2021 as far as your work plan is concerned?
Through the chair, I will tackle that answer. So what we're working on right now is the completion of some of the designations that were previously started and had to be put on hold. As this committee was made aware of, there was a point in time where we didn't have any cultural heritage planners, and so now everyone's kind of getting up to speed and becoming familiar with how we do heritage planning here at the city. So a quick look at the list and some of the work that some of the designations that are close to completion that I'm hoping will be before this committee in short order include Jimmy Thompson Pool. We were looking at Hambley House. I forget the name of the church. I'm sorry. I should remember. It escapes me. We were also working on Desjardins Canal. Dundas Post Office needs to be completed. Royal Connaught is on the list, but actually was designated but was appealed. So that technically, I mean, it's on the list, but has been addressed. So we're trying to finish up those designations that were started. And then as Amber mentioned, our next step is to look at prioritizing the high priorities. We put them in 2021, not necessarily with the I think the realistic expectation that they will be completed, but it's to recognize the importance and the fact that they've been identified as a high priority. So we now need to go through those and determine how do we prioritize those. We do have we do have a budget. We have a capital budget. I think I've explained this to the committee before, and if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but we have money to retain consultants. So we would go through that process of prioritizing retaining consultants and getting some of those additional works underway. And so one of the things that I want to focus on when we're looking at prioritizing are what are some of the quick wins that we know that we can address quite quickly to get some of those designations completed, knowing that there are some that may be a little bit more complicated, and then also looking at the risk to some of the ones that are on the list in terms of making sure that that protection is there. So that's sort of the next steps. But I do hope that the committee will start to see some designations. We were hoping to start bringing some forward as early as next month.
That would be great. Great to see. Janice, did you have any further questions?
No, that was my only question. Thank you.
So any other hands up? So I see David and Robin. So David, we'll start with you.
Yes, I think ever since I've been on this committee, Gage was going to be designated that particular year. This is my second term on the committee, coming to the end of the second term. And we don't see a designation yet for this. It's been on the designation list so long, there's nobody even on this screen, I'm sure, that's even been around that long, that it's been on the list. And we continue to have some issues in Gage Park. And I always say, somebody comes up and does something ridiculous, and then I come forward and say, why isn't this designated? And then I'm told it's on the plan for the next year. And then we go past that time, and then somebody else comes up and does something ridiculous. And then I say, why isn't it on the plan? They say it's on the plan for this year. Like, it goes on and on. And I think Gage Park is the only, sorry about that, Dunnington Grub project owned by in the public domain that isn't designated in Ontario, and it's the largest project that in Ontario, and it should have been designated long ago, at least 10 years ago, and so I say, when is this going to be done? I never get, every time we're told that it's on the list, it's going to be done, and then it's not done. So that's my question. When is Gage Park finally going to be designated so we don't have to deal with continuing issues there?
Through the chair, as I indicated, that wasn't one of the ones that had been started and was underway. So our priority is to complete the designations that were underway. We will then take a look at what else is on the list to do. I do recognize and flagged for myself even that in terms of the 2021 designations, that is probably the oldest one on the list. I think it was added to the list in 2006. So that would also form part of our designation request. So I don't want to commit to saying that Gage Park is the next one we're going to do. We do have to kind of look at the list holistically. But I do think, to your point, the length of time it's been on the list is also important consideration to make when we're looking at prioritizing those designations.
Well, and the other thing is, as I say, you look at prioritizing, but there's always issues coming up that has to be dealt with, and there's an issue going on right now. But without it being designated, the projects are just being brought forward and completed without really any public input at all. And I mean, this is a serious landscape that should be protected. And it's just amazing to me that it just goes on and on and on without being protected. And it should be right there on the list, and it should be done, as soon as possible.
Madam Chair, you are muted.
Thank you, David, for bringing that forward. So hopefully that'll get addressed very quickly and soon in prioritizing the high priority list for 2021. Robin, did you have a follow-up?
Just a thought about the Gore Park and the Akmar Gatehouse again. The idea is that these have been on the priority list many years, and the ones that you're saying you have started or want to complete, were these ones even started?
Through the chair, I don't believe we had retained any consultants, but I want to make sure that I have that correct. So what we'll do is we'll provide a follow-up to the committee following this meeting. I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn, but I don't believe we had. And if one of the staff know otherwise and want to correct me, that's totally fine. But otherwise, we will provide a follow-up after this meeting.
Thank you, Nina. Are there any other speakers in regards to questions or comments for the work plan? Seeing none, may I have a motion to mover and a seconder to receive the information on the work plan?
I see Chuck and I see Graham.
Okay, as we vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Before we move forward to adjourn, is there any other business that committee members would like to discuss today? Oh, I see, Janice.
It's no other business, but I just need clarification through the chair to maybe it's Lorraine that might need to answer this, because I saw the council minutes and the amendment and the vote. Is it still in planning's hands since they changed the original recommendation motion from planning and it went to council? Is this now a done deal? I'm confused.
Of course, Janice, I understand. It can get very confusing. I would have to look back at the entire set of minutes. My understanding is that that particular item was defeated, but the other item has been referred back to
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
My understanding is that Councillor, I believe it was Danko, moved a motion on his own. That was so that may be incorrect, but I do understand that they are two different items.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed to know.
And Graham is nodding, and he's on his game today. So
yeah, he's got two computers.
Thank you for clarifying that, Janice. So if we can get that, we want to make sure everybody's on the same page. I know it's been a very complicated project. We've had a number of motions over a number of terms, and so we need to get that all sorted out in our own minds. So, is there any? If there's no other items, may I have a mover and a seconder, a motion to adjourn? Oh, Graham had his hand up fast.
Graham and Janice.
Graham's going back to the beach.
Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none. Just before we head off, Lorraine, could you just confirm our next meeting date, if you don't mind?
Yes, our next meeting date is September 24th, which is a Friday, and it is at 12:30 p.m.
Great. Oh, Robin's happy. He can sleep in.
Robin seems very excited by that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll see everyone in September.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.